Right. Get started with the housekeeping. Again, welcome. Welcome to the RITIS User Group Quarterly Meeting. Just a few things. We are using Zoom webinar. You can connect your audio either through your computer or your phone, whichever works better. Please note that this web meeting is being recorded. If you have any questions about audio, web, please reach out to Esther. You will be using the Q&A box for your questions, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. To do that, you simply click on the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and type your question in. They'll be monitored by coalition staff as well as our RITIS co-chairs, and we will bring them to the attention of the speakers at the end of their presentations. If you'd like to ask a question verbally, or we may even ask you to unmute if we want to get clarification on a question, you can do so. But in order, just raise your hand if you have a question. We will call, it'll bring you to the top of the list and we can call on you and unmute your line. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mary Grace Parker. If you are familiar with the coalition, you're certainly familiar with Mary Grace. She is currently the interim TISMO program director, and she is the Frey program director. Mary Grace.
Thank you, Joanna. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here and joining the RITIS user group. Stepping in, as you know, for our colleague Denise Marco, who is moving into retirement and hopefully being able to continue this great work with the folks at CATT that Denise has been doing over the last several years until our new TISMO director is on board. So just to bring you up to date on some coalition activities, we held a Distracted Move Over conference back in May. It was extremely well attended, really with a lot of focus on a unified approach to driving change on the roadway. Definitely some elements in there about thinking about ways we can communicate to passengers and trucks and making better information available to think about how we're getting them to move over ahead of scenes. And of course, just bringing people's attention to the safety issues and the impacts on emergency responders and loss of life and more when people don't really understand the value of complying with that move over program. The next thing is a TDM vendor forum, May 25th. That was held. It was an invitation only on volume data. I'm sure some of you may have attended. Info sharing events, considerations for digital infrastructure, that was held back in June of this year. Upcoming, we have some HOGS in-person exchanges. Most of that is going to focus on the virtual reality TIM training sessions. That's by invitation only. Those will be run at the regional HOGS meetings between September and December. Our next RITIS user group meeting will be October 19th. We have a great traveler information summit coming up in Raleigh. Again, that'll be invitation only towards our members, October 24th and 25th. We've got some great presentations and discussions that'll be a part of that. And then a RITIS workshop in November of 2023. So those are the events that have been recent and upcoming. And again, those of you that they're applicable, we hope to see you engaged in them. Next slide. So I am here because, as I mentioned, we are sending Denise off to enjoy her retirement, and we are seeking a TISMO director. I'll be serving in the interim. Anybody that's interested knows somebody who would be good in this role. The key is that focus on 5 emphasis areas: the incident management, travel information, data. Working with this RITIS user group is certainly a part of that role. Looking at connected vehicles and other emergency technologies, as well as training related to TISMO and incident management. If you want more information on that, if you think it's something you're interested in or someone you know, there's information available on our website. I believe Joanna just posted that link in the chat. You can contact me, and our best consideration, it's open for a period of time, but best consideration for those submitted by August 8th. So if that's an area of interest for you, please do take a look at it. And I think that's my areas covering, Joanna. So my next is to turn it over to Matt
Appreciate it.
Rosser. Hi, Matt. Welcome.
Hi,
So
Mary
Matt's your
Grace.
group coach. Thanks for all the work you're doing here, Matt. And appreciate, and let you take this over and appreciate what this group is doing.
Appreciate it, Mary Grace, and thanks for the introduction. Happy to have you in that interim role. Of course, we're sorry to see Denise go, but happy that she's off to retirement, and I'm trying to figure out ways to continue pestering her just because. So Joanna, if you wouldn't mind just hopping into our next little piece, we'll walk through our meeting agenda. So of course you're listening to my voice right now doing this introduction, but you'll be getting rid of me shortly so we can hop into our first spotlight presentation with Kevin Mehaffy from Florida DOT. He'll be looking at how FDOT District 3 leveraged RITIS for its rural TMC. Shortly thereafter, Greg Jordan from the CATT lab is going to be looking at the Philadelphia I-95 bridge collapse and how traffic moved around that. Then on to Michael Pack for our RITIS Product Enhancement Working Group, where we are, what's been updated, and what's to come. And then of course, John Allen looking at the Performance Working Group, Performance Reporting Working Group, reporting back where we've been and where we're going. And last but not least, back to me to just get that agency input from you all, understand what's working well, what's not, ask you guys some questions that may not have been asked thus far, and see where we are. So with that, let me do a quick synopsis of our speakers today. First up, of course, you know Michael Pack. Michael is the director of CATT Lab at the University of Maryland, where he works to make transportation data more easily accessible and usable by ops, planners, and researchers. He has worked previously at the University of Virginia and Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Kevin, who I briefly mentioned, is the Florida DOT regional TMC manager, working for Gannett Fleming. He is an accomplished professional with over 30 years of management experience focusing on transportation infrastructure. That includes over 11 years of experience operating TMCs in both Florida and Missouri. In 2016, he was able to help Florida DOT launch the Northwest Florida SunGuide Regional Traffic Management Center in Chipley, Florida. This $24.3 million TMC covers most of Florida Panhandle, spanning from the Alabama-Florida border to Jefferson County, Florida. Kevin currently manages that very same TMC, bringing extensive knowledge and expertise to his role. Prior to joining Gannett Fleming, Kevin served as the TMC supervisor for the Missouri DOT, where he successfully oversaw the smooth operation of traffic management systems. His hands-on experience in managing TMC operations, combined with his in-depth understanding of transportation infrastructure, has enabled him to effectively support clients in organizing their data for optimal decision-making. Next up is Greg Jordan, very familiar face. Prior to joining CATT Lab, Greg managed a helicopter survey company that conducted 80 origin, destination, and routing surveys using aerial video to trace vehicles. He also used the helicopter results to validate the use of INRIX's trip path dataset for origin destination surveys. Greg has drawn from these experiences to design new capabilities and features for RITIS's trip analytics platform. And finally is John Allen, out of the CATT Lab. John assists in user experience and user interface development, quality assurance, and quality control, and manages special projects and aids in the development of strategic direction for RITIS. John has also acted as a facilitator for several different organizations, including the Eastern Transportation Coalition and the partners in using archived operations data. Mouthful. So I want to thank the participants that we have. As you can see right now, we have 91 logged in with us, with over 30 agencies represented. Every single meeting, it seems like this number grows, and we continue to look forward to new partners that are willing to come in and listen to what we have to offer. And next, I think I get to start asking some poll questions. So first up, the one that we always do, and Joanna will pull this up, is how often do you attend RITIS user group meetings? 1 to 2 times a year, 3 to 4 times per year, or this is my first meeting? I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer that.
Right. Think we're gonna close the poll and show the results.
1 to 2 times, man. The 3 to 4 times. I think this is our biggest number, Joanna, of nearly 60%. So it seems like we got a regular crowd here now, and certainly happy to see that we have about a fifth of our folks attending for the first time. So welcome to you. Hope that we can bring you back for another time and add you to that 3 to 4 times per year. And Joanna, do we have another survey question that we're ready for? Or are we ready to hop in to our first?
Oh, no, you have another one. I think you have 2 more actually.
Dang it. All right. Next one up. How do you use the data and visualization results from RITIS? You only get to choose one of these results, but first one, we use the results directly from RITIS to develop products, or we download the data ourselves and use our agency's own in-house tools to create the tables and visualization products for development. Or we do a little bit of both. So again, give you a few seconds here to answer those, and then we'll show those results.
Give it another couple seconds. Yeah. All right, we're going to close that poll and show those results.
So it looks like a vast majority of us are in that number 3 column, doing a little bit of both. And with a small group of us, just using the data download capabilities and using our own tools. So that's great to see. And I think that's clearly that trend that we continue to see across the board. So we'll move on to number 3 of the poll, which is this. Who is your primary audience for sharing information that was developed from RITIS and the PDA suite? Are those peers? Is that management? That executive leadership, the elected officials, or general public? You only get to choose one. It's a tough question. So choose the one that you do the most. A few more seconds here to get those answers in. I think if we're slowing down here, Joanna,
Yep.
maybe give us a countdown.
Yep. 3, 2, 1, and we'll show those.
So it looks like it's the big group of us are in the peers and the management. I will certainly raise my hand and say that I feel like I'm probably in that category myself. So great to see. But that general public number keeps creeping up every time. All right, I think that does this for our first round of polls. So Kevin, I get to hand it to you.
Thank you. All right. As mentioned, I've been working in the TMCs for about 11 years now. I've been fortunate enough to use RITIS throughout the entire 11 years. So not my first rodeo with RITIS, and I just thought I would share how we're using it here in Florida. Next slide. So an introduction, we are situated in Chipley, Florida. It's in the Panhandle region of Florida. It operates Florida's intelligent transportation system. We're connected to the other TMCs throughout the state. Our ITS system operates a backbone of about 235 miles along I-10 and 56 miles of US 231, 9 miles of US 90, about 4 miles of I-110, expanding across Pensacola and through Tallahassee and Jefferson County as well. Next slide. I always like to give you a map. That way you can kind of see what I just said, because sometimes if you're not familiar with the area, you'll kind of know. You can see that we have 2 metro areas in Pensacola and in Tallahassee, and then a very large rural deployment in between, which gives us kind of some interesting challenges here. The TMC, we kind of have to be good at a little bit of everything. And where we have gaps, we found some solutions for RITIS that can help. So next slide. So our solutions or our issues in the TMC, especially a rural TMC, was geographic coverage. how do you know what's going on across a wide area, and information sharing. How do we share the information we have with our partners? Deployment expansion. So when we came down here, we were originally just a very rural section that connected to other deployments. And then we had to quickly expand into areas that we didn't have any information about, or we were growing into new areas. So we had to use RITIS for that as well. Audits, we use RITIS in our audit process, our TSM&O reporting. So I'll just kind of go back over it. So geographic coverage, we leveraged RITIS to listen to all of our major radio scanners. When we noticed that there was the scanners on the map, we immediately started deploying them. And this is probably the most used tool that we use in the TMC. We keep it up 24/7. We found it to be an extremely useful resource. Information sharing, the RITIS platform is actually inside the DOT network, so it makes video sharing pretty easy. And we were also able to share a higher quality video with some of our internal partners. Deployment expansion, we leveraged RITIS to determine the impact of travel and determine historical norms in areas where we weren't familiar. So as we had to grow, we would leverage the RITIS to find out the things that we didn't know. And as the audits, we use this in real-time event audits, and we also use it in after-action reviews. RITIS has been very helpful in supporting those review efforts. TSM&O reporting, the central office has mandated that each district do a TSM&O reporting and have performance measures, and part of those performance measures is measuring the TTI and PTI, which is travel time index and planning time index, and we use RITIS to actually get those numbers. Next slide. So our geographic coverage. So again, it was very difficult for us to know what's going on and get situational awareness in these very rural areas. And we noticed on the traffic map, if you select our traffic map, and next slide, the drop down actually showed radio scanners, and my staff was like, oh, that's interesting. Let's tap that. When we did, we noticed, next slide, we noticed that we had almost 18 towers that could be accessed in our deployment, and our operators are listening to most of those towers and able to access those communications of law enforcement, EMS, fire, super useful. As a matter of fact, we had an issue in Calhoun County with a mass shooter, and the highway patrol was unable to contact that dispatch center due to it being inundated with phone calls. And within a few minutes, we were able to get them a username, a password, and get them accessed so that they were getting that live radio feed. So very, very useful tool. Law enforcement was very thankful that we were able to provide that for them through RITIS. Next slide. Information sharing. So we talked about how do we share, probably the thing that the TMC has that most people want is the traffic cameras. We noticed when we went into the RITIS software and started poking around, we found when we selected the video cameras, our traffic cameras, can you select next slide? That you could zoom to the area that you wanted, select the map. You can actually build a video wall if you want. And we noted that the quality of video streams that was coming out was the same quality that we were getting in the TMC. So we were not only able to share the video stream, which they could get from 501 or they could get from other sources, but we could give them the higher resolution, which again was very popular with law enforcement. They're trying to identify a vehicle or read a plate or something like that. The higher resolution was desired, and so very useful for that purpose. Also, it doesn't seem like it has a lot of restrictions. So it's, you get them a username and a password, and then they're able to almost get into it immediately. Additionally, we noted that in the upper right-hand corner, there was a chat feature. So if any of our internal partners are actually logged in, we actually could use this to chat with them. So I don't think we've done it yet, but it's interesting to know that it's there at least. So next slide. So attacking the size of our deployment, like I said, we grew several times, and sometimes we took on, so we just most recently added a bridge in Pensacola. They redid the bridge, and then that bridge was added to our system, and instrumentation was put on the bridge, and we didn't have any historical data. So I thought it was pretty interesting that I could pull the HERE data and could compare what the old bridge was compared to the new bridge. And we did actually see an improvement in traffic speeds. We saw an improvement in travel time and the planning time index. However, it was a little bit disappointing because we had record numbers at the event. So it wasn't like we were comparing apples to apples. And so it was, although we improved, there was still challenges due to the sheer number of staff that we had, or number of people that we had attending the event. Next slide. So again, this is the same snapshot, but just sliced a little bit differently. This is the same bridge, and we were looking at what our service patrol routes should be and how long we should hold our staff on that bridge. And we noticed that right after the fireworks display on 4th of July, of course, now we can see, using the RITIS data, exactly when that traffic returned to normal. And we can actually go back in time and compare that to past 4th of Julys and make a really good judgment call as to how long we should hold that service patrol staff on that bridge. Next slide. Audit support. So we're using RITIS to support our audits. My supervisors noticed something really interesting, that they actually could do real-time audits of events from home. They're using this kind of like a VPN, if you will, into the back of because this actually goes directly to our SunGuide software. It works exactly like a VPN, where they can actually see, there's the event. Oh, did we meet our PM of our notification times? Did we meet our PM of when things have to be called into the FHP? Did we meet our requirement for DMS verification and postings? Very interesting that they're using it this way, because this was not an ability that we could do before. We noticed this on RITIS. So now that RITIS has this, it's like we actually can see what the operators are doing in real time and correct them if they're not. So if we see that they missed a performance measure, we can actually call them and say, hey, you don't have a DMS up, or hey, you haven't dispatched your road ranger yet, or this needs to be called into FHP, you haven't done it yet. So very, very useful tool, and kudos to my supervisors for figuring that out. Next slide. So additional audit support. When we do after actions in the TMC, we will identify any issues that we have. We identify what response we took on that issue, any ongoing response, any lessons learned, and we always create a timeline for how the event unfolded and what happened. And I think sometimes we get questioned about events, and particularly if you had an event that occurred in an area that had high congestion. So how do you determine when a regular, so if we have an event that happens during regular rush hour congestion, when does the event congestion end and the regular congestion continue? And RITIS actually does a pretty good job of this. You can actually see the slight variances in speed, and you can identify exactly when that incident congestion ended and when the regular congestion continued. So very useful tool for that, and gives us a way to support what we're reporting in our after action reviews. Next slide. Our TSM&O reporting, we're using the performance summaries to get our PTI. Next slide. And then we take it and we actually dump it into, this is done with Esri Experience. It's like an interactive reporting I don't know what you call it. It's like an interactive site, and we can send it out to them, and it allows you to see. And well, let's just do the next slide. There's a quick video, and it should help us to, yeah, I can explain it better that way. So here's our 5 performance measures in our TSM&O report. The reader can actually select the different, so we have secondary crashes. They can select that, and it will take them to an interactive map and hotspots and locations. If we go back, you can pull up the planning time index, which it'll do here in just a minute. I think. Did it freeze?
Yeah, let me try it.
All right. And again, so there's our planning time indexes, and then you can also embed the RITIS website into it. So it's easy for you to access that. It's fine. We don't have to keep limping it along, but you can see how that kind of works, where it becomes more than just a report. It becomes almost something that they can interact with, that you can actually select and filter the data through. And that RITIS data is helping us feed this report. And we send this off to central office and to our internal and external partners to say, this is the things these are our goals. We either met our goals or we didn't. But very useful. And we'll do the next slide. Can you do the next slide, please? Thanks. So in summary, the D3 RTMC increased our incident awareness by leveraging the RITIS radio feeds 24/7. We're sharing high resolution video with our internal and external partners using RITIS. We're leveraging RITIS to accurately identify congestion trends, even in areas that we don't have any data for. And we're using RITIS to verify after action and real-time audits. And we're also using it to demonstrate that we've met our TSM&O goal compliance. So pretty heavy users of the system. We're big fans. Next slide. I wouldn't be me if I didn't make enhancement requests while you give me the microphone. Some of the things I'd like to see RITIS do is I would really like to see the reporting be exportable and easier to share. I would hope that you guys would consider using like an API for Esri or Power BI. I would like for saved reports. As somebody, I think for my PTI portion of the TSM&O report, I have to run like 16 reports every quarter to get those numbers. And it would be nice if it would save them for me to where I could just go in and do the same thing instead of having to set them all up and then run them each time. So that would be awesome. I also wouldn't mind having the ability to archive posts or reports. So that way, if somebody else wanted to repeat the same report, they could go in and they could actually reference exactly the same parameters that I put in and get the exact same results. So next slide. And that's pretty much the end of my presentation. Any questions or?
Appreciate that, Kevin. And I'll get you started with a question for myself. I'm curious. I know FDOT has a very robust system, with their ATMS. I believe SWERI provides it to you guys. And why did you all decide in some of these cases to use RITIS? Is that alongside of? Is that in place of? Walk me through what y'all's operators are looking at, since they have that other system as well.
Well, I'll answer that. So usually, District 3 is a little bit different because we are more rural and we tend to be more proactive, which maybe is a fancy way of saying we're not quite as busy as the other centers. Like Orlando, they're just inundated, right? So they're just reacting. Well, we have the privilege of being able to just, my staff here, they just love to dig in. They love to leverage everything that they can find. We are the heaviest users of Waze data. We're probably one of the heaviest users of RITIS data, just by nature of we're hungry and we're looking for it. But that's that's probably the short answer, is that we're just hungrier. So we're always leveraging everything we can find. I think the TMC right now, we built a dashboard for our Waze alerts, and we're getting a report about every 30 seconds on that dashboard. It's pretty impressive. And any other district would go, you're nuts. But we're a little bit weird here. So yeah, we chase everything. So that's why we've kind of leveraged the RITIS. Like I said, the scanners are awesome, especially in the areas where we can't see. Although our deployment is only the interstates, we'll manage anything that we know about. Again, we're wired a little differently. So, but that helps us to do that effectively. So did I answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, you did. And I think going also to your audit question, more maybe a little bit different, but just, were there any shocks that came out of that? Maybe even like on that specific data level where you're looking at RITIS compared to what you guys might have in your own internal system that made you raise an eyebrow?
Well, sure, because you always have that question, right? So if you have an incident that occurs where you have 15-mile-an-hour normal rush hour traffic, when does it return to 15 miles an hour instead of 5 miles an hour? It's so hard to tell with the cameras, and you don't get that from SunGuide. You have to use the hard data that's out there, and RITIS does a pretty good job with that, with the map tool. It's a visualization, so it's so easy to identify. Right there's the exact moment when our event ended.
Okay.
Whereas because your two options are, if it's in heavy congestion, you go, well, I either close it immediately because it's always congested, or I wait till after rush hour to close it, and neither one are accurate. So RITIS allows us to do it to where it's very accurate.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. As folks have additional questions, feel free to add those to the Q&A box. We'll be watching that and are happy to help facilitate the answering of those questions. But with that, I think we're ready to go ahead and go to our next spotlight presentation, which is with Greg. So Greg, you got your camera on, the mic is turned on. We're handing it to you.
Okay, I cannot start screen sharing well. Okay, there we go. And 1 second. Right here. Share. All right, can you see my screen, and am I loud and clear?
We can see your screen and you are loud and clear.
Great, okay, well, thank you, Matt, and hello, everybody. This is Greg Jordan, the CATT Lab, and I just want to talk about, I'm going to talk about trip analytics today, and then Jesse Burke is going to touch into a little bit of trend map, looking at the I-95 bridge collapse that happened in early June. My main analysis here is with trip analytics. I'll just give you a quick refresher because some of it I just covered in the last meeting, but I'll just quickly refresh and then show some really interesting analyses we were able to do. But keep in mind, if you are working for or in or part of the staff for an agency in any one of these states, you probably already have access to trip analytics for various state ranges. And this list is growing. There's other agencies and organizations that are considering it, but this is just kind of a get you started. Many use cases, I did talk about some of these during the last meeting, and always happy to give a presentation to anybody that wants to go deeper into it. But today we're really going to focus on how to use this tool for the bridge collapse. The big picture, what have we got? We've got real world pathways of real world trips. And if we can record them for time 1 and record them for time 2, then we can really analyze and understand shifts that are caused by various things like closure of a major interstate, for example. We're using breadcrumb trails from either cell phones or connected vehicles or truck dispatch truck fleets. That's a source of real world information. Somewhere around 5 to 10% of the trips in the real world are being captured by the database. If we go ahead and put a polygon on the map and call it a study area, then what we're going to do is report the information inside the study area and ignore what's outside the study area. And what that means is that we'll get really good understandings within the study area because we trim away all the outside stuff that we don't want to see. So going to the, I'm sure everyone here has heard about this one way or another, but for big perspective, this happened northeast of the downtown Philadelphia area on I-95, which is on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River. It was basically both directions were closed right away. And we're going to look mainly today, we'll look at the southbound direction. But what's interesting is on the northwest side of the river, you have an interstate high-speed corridor for I-95. But offset in New Jersey, you also have two parallel. You have Interstate 295 that runs adjacent and parallel to the New Jersey Turnpike. So a lot of Philadelphia traffic from New Jersey goes on these routes, but also a lot of bypass traffic comes up the New Jersey Turnpike, and that's the main corridor if you're going to New York, to or from New York, and you're not going to Philadelphia, a lot of that traffic goes up and down the Turnpike. So the very first question, and actually this question was posed to me by the operations people at PennDOT, to what degree have drivers shifted to the parallel route across the river to the two high-speed corridors on the other side? That's the question. So what we did is created a study area, which is going to focus our study inside the 295 loop around Trenton, all the way down to the Delaware Memorial Bridge. And that's where the south end, that's where these three routes all come together. So that, that's going to be the study area. And then we're going to put two spatial filters, basically a trip line. We want trips that tripped over the first filter from, and then also went over the second one. And the second was placed exactly opposite the closure because we really wanted to find the diversion for a T1 before and T2 after. So these are the spatial filters. What we're going to do is pluck out just the trips based on where they went, in this case, these two screen lines. Then the second one is when they went there, and we're going to look at a combination of the 7 weekdays beforehand, immediately before, because June 12th is when it happened, and then the 6 weekdays after, including the day that it happened, between 5 in the morning until 12 noon. So about that time period. And we're going to focus, which ones we're going to look at the light vehicles because we're really looking at the passenger cars for this study. We can also do tractor trailers. We can also do medium weight trucks as well. But for this analysis, we did the light vehicles. Once we run that query, during the before period, we found 1,169 trips that met those filter criteria. And we were able to consolidate them into 872 unique pathways. So there was some duplication of trips that were coming from the same place. And from that, we created an OD matrix report. We did a zone map report, which is nothing more than a visualization of the data in the OD matrix. And we're going to look at the route map report because that's where we really have our interesting insights right here. So here is a route map report that we produce. This is for the before period, but at the top we have our table with our bundled routes and travel times. So each unique route has a record in the table, and then there's a trip count for each one of them, along with the travel time statistics that go with it. Then we're going to show those same routes on the map. And that's all the yellow pathways that you see. And then we're going to be able to draw a screen line across the routes to get trip counts at each crossing. And of course, the user can draw that anywhere the user wants to analyze. There is a summary box on the left that adds up what they all are. Of course, the screen line always adds to 100%. But in the bottom, you have coordinates that you can copy and paste because if you're going to make a time series, you want to use exactly the same screen line each time. So that's the route map basics. So for this example, for the 7 weekdays beforehand, we found essentially a third of the heavy traffic, basically 36% went down on the I-95 side, and we had 22 and 37% over on the other side of the river. Essentially, you've got basically 1/3, 2/3 on the Pennsylvania, New Jersey side. This was the baseline conditions before it happened. And if we look after it happened, of course, 95 is closed. And so the other routes around that location went from 1% of the traffic to 9% of the traffic. So there was a shift to some local routes of people that went through there. But take a look at the other side of the river. You basically, 295 went from 22% to 33%, and Turnpike was now capturing from 37 up to 50%. So these are direct quantitative answers to the questions that PennDOT was looking at when they requested this. Now, I want to look at, remember those 9%, these trips that shifted local. Let's really zoom in and take a look at those local detour. This is from the Philadelphia detour route, and this is the official recommended signed detour route that you should take if you're coming on southbound 95. What we want to do is to make the study area smaller, because when you use that, I call it the cookie cutter effect. We're cutting off a lot of the routes, the collector system and the distribution center. So you have fewer origins and fewer destinations. So you can drive up the trip count and you can consolidate onto your routes much quicker that way. So here's where we redrew a study area on the Pennsylvania side of the river to include I-95 and 6 miles upstream to see where they got off 95 and how they got through and have a sense of what their travel times were. And we ran a before and we ran an after. And I'm going to show you the after results right here. This is the first one. And up in the table here, it has the #1 ranked route. And it has travel times up there. It says, and in fact, this one is the official detour. And it was the #1 route. And we had a majority of the traffic taking that. And here they're coming down 95, and then they exit off. And it's kind of zoomed over here. They exit off, they make a right on Bly, a left on State Road, and they go on by. And their median travel time during the time period was 18 minutes, which meant their average speed was 20 miles an hour to go the 6 miles. So it's really not a whole lot. You know, you would have taken 6 minutes anyway to take it at full flow. So it's not a terrible delay to go through that. The #2 turned out to be very similar. It's just they didn't quite turn at Bly like they're supposed to. They just kept on going straight until they were forced to turn, and that cost them 2 extra minutes per travel time. So that's the #2. But the interesting result is the #3. The #3 shows up here, you've got traffic exiting 3 miles upstream, cutting over to State Road and coming down State Road. And there they are, they're coming into the area and they're continuing to join in the same spot, but their median travel time was 12 minutes. So they trimmed off basically 8 to 10 minutes by getting off early and getting what I call equivalent average speed of 30 miles an hour to go, that's the 6 miles. So this is an example of how we can use that. Another interesting thing is to literally put the screen line across those routes and say, of all the vehicles, notice the black dot here. The user clicked on the map and said, turn everything blue that went through that spot. So everything that went through that spot, here's the blues up here, and we draw the line and we see that 61% went by the published detour route, whereas 25% did the straight through. And there's that 8% of the, I won't call them smarter than other people, but the people that basically save some time by doing the other route. So next, I'd like to mention Scott Benedict at PennDOT actually prepared this. And I talked to Scott and I said, what exactly, what pressure did you have to get information out quickly in light of this emergency? And his answer was interesting. He said, it wasn't that there was a lot of pressure on us because nobody really knew what these tools could do. We put pressure on ourselves to get information that we thought would be needed by the districts, and in this case, District 6, which is the city of Philadelphia. So this is an example of one of the maps they produced, and they essentially wanted to look at trips that literally were coming from and to the local area within the Philadelphia area. And when you put a filter like this from or to, you can require that the trip started inside the purple area, or it simply started outside and passed through, or both. That's a choice you have. But they wanted it started inside and ended inside. And how did these trips move that followed those spatial filter criteria? And then they did the before, and then they did the after, and they showed what routes. I think everyone expected they would shift over to Roosevelt Boulevard. And of course, we saw a lot of that right there. But here are the other roads through there. So these were the takeaways by PennDOT showing that the travel times increased by almost 50%. This was a kind of their takeaway. The last thing I want to do now is to just kind of ask Jesse Burke for his perspective. He's a name we often see on these meetings. We all know him well. And of course, this was right in his backyard. So Jesse, let me hand it over to you. And I think I'm going to stop sharing because I think you want to share a few things that you did.
Yes. Thank you, Greg. First of all, just thank you for this analysis. Really, really interesting. Obviously, like you said, it's kind of in my backyard here. For folks who don't know me, my name is Jesse Burke. I'm the manager of the Office of Capital Programs at DVRPC. These days, I work mostly on our TIPs in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. But I've been working with the I-95 project for quite a long time because it's actually being reconstructed all throughout this area where Greg was highlighting the collapse. So unfortunately, the collapse took place on a segment that had been rebuilt not all that long ago. So I've been very focused on helping the I-95 team look at kind of our regional congestion and some of those issues. And so this is obviously a really interesting test case there. We have a lot of folks that come from Bucks County, which is north of Philadelphia, and kind of head southbound, a lot of folks using I-95. So I did a little bit of quick analysis, which I think is pretty interesting that it actually complements Greg's work pretty well, I think. So I was using just the trend map tool to get a quick kind of sense of what does the congestion look like. And so because we're kind of combining arterials and highways here, I was looking at the planning time index to kind of normalize, the speeds are very different on these different roads that we're looking at here. And this is by no means comprehensive, but kind of a selection of roads, although, some of the ones that Greg mentioned are here. So kind of here is State Road, which is the official detour route. And then we have Torresdale and Frankfurt, which were some of the parallel routes that we heard a lot about there. And as well, you can see some of the kind of east-west routes that people were using to connect to different routes. Up here, we have Roosevelt Boulevard, which is another kind of major route, especially if you're coming from Bucks County to the north. So what we see on the left-hand panel here is looking at kind of 2022. I like to look at kind of middle of the week in terms of what we know are the heaviest peak movements these days in our region. So that's kind of our baseline condition. And as you can see, there's normally quite a bit of congestion on I-95, a lot of travel time unreliability in terms of looking at the planning time index. Also just want to note that I calibrated the values of the planning time index to match kind of what we use in our congestion management process as far as thresholds for our region that are, above, average conditions. So, we have some pretty high values. So 3.5 planning time index is what we consider pretty high in our region. So the left here is sort of a baseline, and we're looking at 8 a.m. kind of morning commuter traffic. And then, so you see there's usually quite a bit of congestion on I-95, not necessarily so much on these parallel arterials. Roosevelt Boulevard usually does have a fair amount of congestion. But I think you can see pretty clearly that the parallel arterials that are closer to I-95 really saw a pretty dramatic increase in their congestion and unreliability. So going from a very low planning time index to a much higher one. Interestingly too, I think, is that a lot of folks kind of stuck with I-95 all the way down to the detour that Greg highlighted. So the planning time index went from, pretty high to pretty insanely high, almost 10. That's a pretty crazily high number. And then two, you see some additional congestion on Roosevelt Boulevard in the spots that are normally congested. And as Greg pointed out, the travel time did increase there, but I would say none of this was really catastrophic, and one reason for that, I think, is that our local transit agency, SEPTA, was able to put out some additional service on 2 different rail lines that serve Bucks County and points north, and they saw a pretty significant uptick in ridership of over 10% on each of those lines. So I think, that small amount of diversion during peak hour really could help. I think what also helps in our region is we have a lot of different options, kind of as Greg pointed out, people who knew different routes to take could kind of save themselves some travel time. So depending where you're going, you're able to avoid some of the worst congestion. I think part of the reason that you see a lot of congestion here directly parallel to I-95 is the detour for one, and also because there are quite a few freight destinations here. So some of the freight traffic really had to use these roadways. And then also just to quickly highlight what happened in New Jersey, again, kind of on the left, we have a baseline condition, and on the right, the 2 weeks of the closure. And so I think you can see here, pretty significant increase in kind of the everyday peak hour. And so now we're looking at 4 p.m. You know, there's generally a pretty good queue and a lot of congestion on 295 southbound here. And that's a lot of commuter traffic mixed with kind of the longer haul traffic. But you can see during that closure, with additional folks using this roadway, that kind of typical backup and congestion really increased and was more severe. And this is 130, which is another route that Greg mentioned. And you can see here too, kind of more congestion than you would typically see along that roadway. There's a lot of signals along this corridor. And so I think you can probably get some insights into where, you know, the signal timing just didn't work so well with as much volume as we were seeing here. So anyway, I just wanted to quickly share that, and thank you to Greg and the team for giving me a chance to talk about that. It's really interesting to see how these different types of analysis can complement each other and what we can learn kind of going forward in the future. You know, hopefully we don't have another situation like this, but any type of similar situation where we're dealing with detours and diversions, you know, it just gives us some insight into how we can manage that comprehensively.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, Greg and Jesse. Have a few minutes for Q&A. And again, I'll get us started here. So Greg, I guess to you, and this may also be a question for Michael, is, you know, typically, you know, with trip data that comes in about what, a month later after the month closes out. So was INRIX able to get that to you guys in a much quicker rate so that you guys could do that analysis, or did you all complete that analysis, you know, here in the last few weeks?
I think INRIX moved very quickly to talk to PennDOT, and not only did they pick up, they did a kind of an emergency deploy of June 1st through, you know, June 11th, you know, right before it happened, within a couple of days. And then a few more days later, we actually had it out for the week afterwards. And a few more days after that, we had it 2 weeks out. So it was an emergency. The other thing they did that was really neat was offered to basically throw in the data on the New Jersey side of the river, because the Pennsylvania data set only had Pennsylvania trips. So you couldn't get the full picture. You got trips in New Jersey as long as they touched Pennsylvania, but for the trips that didn't touch Pennsylvania, it was kind of missing from the analysis. So we actually created another special data set that had both Pennsylvania and New Jersey, so that we could literally draw on both sides and get the full picture. And that was also done, INRIX did that as well, just to get PennDOT to be as useful as this could be.
That's great.
I kind of have a follow-up question along the same line. What was the frequency of the data coming in? How quick could you get it?
I mean, how many, what was the lag from when it occurred to when we actually had the data? In this case, and nothing was set up ahead of time, I think it was about a 7-day delay. So it was not like day to go. I do know that it is possible in a special situation, like if you know a major transit strike is coming up, that special arrangements can be made if we know ahead of time. I know INRIX has done this in the past where they've been able to feed the information to you much more quickly. But in this case, without any warning at all, that's the best they could do.
And
Which
as far as the trend map information, you know, we were able to start looking at that, you know, the next day after the incident happened, and each subsequent day as new data came in. You know, so that was really powerful to be able to look at that pretty much almost in real time.
Appreciate that, guys. And Michael, before I kick you off, Joanna, do we have one more poll question that we wanted to ask before we got into the enhancement?
We do, and Esther will bring that up now. I think everybody should be able to read it directly. This is not one where we can share the results.
Yeah. So the question to everyone is, what would you like to hear about at future RITIS user group meetings? And while you guys are thinking about that and writing away, Jesse, when you had your visuals up, I was and knowing that Michael's getting ready to come up and talk about the product enhancement group, it's like, what would have been really great is that like 5-minute by 5-minute slice of those trend maps talking about, that shows the differences. So like the temporal comparison map, but a step through. So, Michael, if you guys are feeling saucy, I would love to see that one day.
Always feeling saucy. I can actually go ahead and get started while people are responding to this poll.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea, Michael.
Sure. So I'm filling in for Bob Frey for MassDOT today. He couldn't be here. He's on vacation. He's going to talk briefly about the enhancement working group and the status that we've made on the enhancements, and then I'll be also talking about other deployments and stuff that we've been making thus far through the last year or so. So if you weren't already familiar, the enhancement working group, it's a set of states that volunteer some funding every single year. That funding goes to a pot, and then we vote on the enhancements that we want to make to the various tools and technologies in the RITIS platform. And so we've been real busy within the last year. We've been doing a lot of development and deployment. We are getting ready to make another presentation to this enhancement working group, where we will show them all the things that we've heard about in the last year or so that needs to be programmed, and then we'll be voting pretty soon. But with that, we've made a lot of progress in the last few months. We've deployed a lot of new functionality. There's a few things that are a little behind schedule, not behind funding, but just behind schedule, and that we're still working on. And I'm going to go over all of those things right now, but this is the list that we decided to work on. And just to be clear, some of the funding for these things is coming from other sources, like grants that we apply for, but the core stuff is coming from the enhancement working group. So the first thing is the automated work zone reporting tool. This is really a scoping study that we've been working on. The CATT lab has finished all of our designs and for this particular tool. And we are now working to schedule a meeting with the working group to go over all of these designs. We got a little caught up with some vacation and holidays, but we're back in it again. So be on the lookout for an invite to those particular meetings. But as a part of these meetings, we'll be showing you some designs here in a little bit of what's going to come out of that. We did add a congestion only layer option into the RITIS website. So, for those of you who have access to pro-based speed data from NRIX here or TomTom, you know that it turns the entire map green and red and orange and yellow based on the speeds that are out there. It can sometimes be overwhelming. So what we did is we deployed the ability to hide all of the roads that are performing really well and show congestion only. You can do this for congestion. You can also do this for comparative speed, and then look at like the worst performing roads. It'll hide everything that's green and just show you the bad stuff. And so here's how you get access to it. There's a little arrow to the left of the probe speed data layer. Then whichever data set your state purchases, you can then select that. Over to the left, you'll see a drop down for how you want that data displayed. Then you can show all speeds or congestion only. So that's available now, and we've got some good feedback from that thus far. Here's just a zoom in to show you how you can get over to those enhancements and those options. We've also added a road weather tile option. So instead of just looking at radar data on the RITIS map, you can now turn on a road weather data layer, and that essentially color codes the underlying road network based on the amount of precipitation and the type of precipitation. So rain, ice, snow, all that gets visualized. And then last but not least, we've partially deployed a speeding layer option. I say partially because we've only deployed this for HERE's probe data. We're still working on it for INRIX data. But essentially, if we have your speed limit data for your roads, then you can go in and you can select the speed as the option, and you can select only show exceeding the speed limit. And that will then highlight all the roads that are going faster than the reported speed limit on the road. We don't, we do some color coding based on how much over the speed limit the road is, but we don't give you the specific number. And note that some probe data providers cap the speed at a certain level. So it's never going to be like, 200 miles per hour on the roadway, even if someone is driving 200 miles per hour out there. But that's partially deployed for HERE and will be coming out for INRIX before too long. The next item is sharing of dashboards and reports. So for the sharing of dashboards and report, this is essentially the ability for you to create dashboards and other things and then share them with other people without having to just give them a link. So there's a pretty complex management dashboard that we've put together that allows you to decide with whom in your organization or outside of your organization you want to share, whether you want them to have the ability to edit that report and all sorts of other things. That is still in development, and we believe that that will be fully deployed in September. Reporting templates. We're constantly developing new reporting templates. We did recently deploy a holiday travel forecast, but John Allen is going to give us an update in a little bit on some of the work zone reporting stuff that he's been working on, and hopefully before too long, we'll have a work zone reporting template up here as well. Speaking of the automated work zone reporting that I started to discuss a little bit earlier, we have started to put together we have finished putting together designs for this. I'm just going to show you a couple of examples right now. And if you are excited about these, you can come to our work zone reporting template or work zone reporting project working group, and we'll talk to you about them in more detail there. But we're coming up with different designs. One is like a performance summary. It will tell you, okay, here's some goals that your agency has set, and here's whether or not you're meeting goals for the management of the work zone related to speed and queues and delay. We've got another version that looks at user delay cost in a particular work zone and how that compares today to other days of the week. Lots of different examples. Here's another design where you're comparing a couple of date ranges. Maybe you want to compare this week to last week. Just different ways to display the different types of data, the queues and the queue links. And then a traditional bar chart graph where you can look at the vehicle hours of delay or the queues or other measures over time for each day of the week. And we highlight which days the actual work zones or which times the work zones occurred and whether or not there were crashes or weather events that may have impacted the work zone as well. And then trying to add in things like congestion scans into the work zone reporting tool and other graph-based monitoring devices where you can look at the queues, speed, vehicle hours delay, and even weather, see if weather might have had an impact on the performance of the work zone. So that's a high-level overview. That's not even half of the designs, but we will come back and we will have a special meeting just dedicated to those designs. We'll walk you through every single one of them, show you how they are expected to work and get your feedback on it. Moving on, I want to talk about the causes of congestion graphs. You know, we've already made enhancements to this tool to show the variability that you can have in the attribution of a particular incident or event type to the amount of congestion that's out on the roadway. That's been deployed a long time ago, and there's all sorts of ways to export this data. What we wanted to do is remind people that this tool only works if we have your volume data. And we need new volume data from you every single year to make sure that we're not missing any segments of the roadway, and to make sure that everything is updated properly. And to be able to update this tool, again, we're going to need every state to give us their volume data by October. So if you're a state that uses this tool, you need to start talking to us now about this, because it can take a while to get all that volume data updated. Please feel free to reach out to me or support if you need help in figuring this out. There's other things that we've done with the causes of congestion that go beyond the tool that's deployed and most of you use. We also have a thing at Treeversity. It's treeversity.cattlab.umd.edu, which allows you to compare how the causes of congestion are changing over time. I did a demo of this the last time that we got together. I'm not going to go through it again this time. I do have some exciting news about the map click corridor selection. So this is a way to use in the Probe Data Analytics Suite, the map, just to click on a starting point and an ending point on the roadway, and be able to then automatically have the system connect all of these points together. Here's an example of what it would look like. Connects everything together. I saw a working demo of this earlier in the week. This is nearing completion, and we hope to have this deployed in another month. So be on the lookout for this. I think a lot of people are going to like that. And then within the last month, we deployed a brand new tool to the Probe Data Analytics Suite. It's called the Corridor Speed Bins tool. Let me jump over and show it to you real quick. There we go. This is the RITIS website. The Corridor Speed Bin tool looks very similar to all the other tools that we have, where you go and you select a corridor, you define a route or something like that. You choose the time of day, the day of week, the date range you want to analyze. Depending on your user preferences, you'll be able to select, which data provider you have access to. And the output of this tool is a drawing, rendering of the road, the corridor that you selected. And then for each of the TMC or XD segments or whatever segmentation you select, we then tell you how much of the time during the date range you selected, the roads were in a particular speed category. And you can dynamically change what the colors are and what the speed readings are. So I've got 0 to 10 miles per hour, 10 to 22, 22 to 30, and so on and so forth. All of these you can dynamically change the color of them. And you put your mouse over any one and tell you, okay, this particular segment was experiencing significant congestion of speeds less than 10 miles per hour for 3 hours and 47 minutes during the particular 24-hour period that I looked at. And it breaks it down for all the other speed bins as well. And you can see the breakdown there. While I've just selected one date range here, the tool does give you the option to select multiple date ranges that you can use for like before and after analysis of a particular corridor. And you can always turn on and off each of these in the display options if you just want to see, say, a particular day. Then you can see that. You can even just look at the left side or just the right side. Whoops. There we go, clicking too fast. You can turn off colors. If you don't want to see the really good performing roads, you just want to see the poor performing roads, you can do that as well. So that's a brand new tool that we're excited about and hope everyone gets some value out of. A couple more updates. Police crash data analytics This is making good progress. It's essentially taking the event query tool in RITIS and not just looking at your ATMS event data or your construction data, but also giving the ability to look at police crash safety data sets. And several of the states have given us their police crash data, and we're building out all these visualizations that will let you look at the crash counts per mile on a particular roadway, or generate crash summary reports, create different maps that tell you what types of injuries have occurred along the roadways, and be able to do some really nice filtering. Say, if you just want to see crashes that included yellow school buses on a Wednesday when the lighting was down, you can do that type of filtering and visualization, which is pretty cool. So some of these are going to start to be deployed later this fall, but it's going to be iterative. We'll deploy a couple of features and functionality, and then we'll have to do some more development, and we'll deploy some more. But early fall is when you'll start to see some of these come out. And then last but not least, we want to welcome 2 new states to the RITIS family and to this user group. The state of Vermont is now participating in RITIS, and we're working to integrate all of their data into the RITIS platform. And the state of Arizona has also recently joined forces with us, and we're also working to integrate all of their data into the system. So you'll see the map populate with those states fairly soon. And I think that's all I have. It is. And turn it over to John Allen now.
Michael, let me just start things here. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to give you an update. Oh, first of all, can you hear me and see me okay? See my presentation?
Yep. Well, we're seeing your, it hasn't gone into presentation mode yet. There you go.
There we go. So I wanted to give everybody a quick update on RITIS reporting updates and what we've been doing here. So 2 really good examples from the agencies. First one is from FDOT, who put together this really compelling report using RITIS results and took one of our after action review templates, modified it to their liking and needs, and put together this report. And this report was for a major incident that happened on I-95 in Palm Beach County, fuel tanker and collision and fire. And it broke up into 2 parts. One was an incident overview, and the second was the performance results of that particular incident and its effect on the roadway network. So the first page is, I think, really spot on in terms of providing a good overview of what happened in a really easy and compelling way. Very simple to understand. You can hand this to anybody, whether it's management or executive leadership, and they can read this thing, really understand what the situation was there. And then the performance report, same thing. It's a couple simple graphs showing the travel time impacts of this particular incident, and then some event bottlenecks and delay aspects to the effects of this incident. This thing closed both directions of I-95 for several hours, so obviously a very big impact in terms of user delay costs and hours of delay there. So they're really happy about this particular report, so much so that their FDOT's TIM planning is going to adopt this as their standard reporting format and layout for all future major incidents. And they're also looking to add some additional metrics there, such as secondary crashes. So I think they did a terrific job in using the RITIS results and one of the templates and modifying it to their particular needs. The second template was used by TxDOT for this past year's 4th of July. And what's unique about this is that in most cases, agencies will look at a particular area, say the DC metropolitan area, and analyze the roadway impacts and then put them up here and say, you know, be prepared for delay here, delay there. But Texas is such a large state that there's great distances a lot of times in between cities and towns and other areas. So they wanted to actually look at roadways and then give advice on particular areas along those roadways. So you can see the tremendous amount of mileage on these 4 interstates that they chose that crisscross the state. So they developed these 4 different travel forecast advisories and posted them on Twitter. And along with that, they put incident alerts as they came up for these particular roadways to inform folks, proactively. So you have an idea as you're traveling using these templates about what times to travel, and then you get updates about some of the conditions that are happening out there real time. So I think they did a nice job here too. And what's really helpful with the updates is not only you're going to help minimize traffic incident impact and people will drive safer and have a smoother trip, but you can use this information too to develop some after action reviews. So looking at some of the incident updates from El Paso Fire Department, because this was a hazmat scene, just grab some of their updates and created this very simple timeline at the bottom here. So what you could do is take this timeline, where the location is, the kind of times, jump onto RITIS, and through their event query tool, you can isolate this particular incident and then use our incident timeline feature, which is just an icon that you click on, to get a real comprehensive view of the incident from, DMS, lane status, responder activity, all that is in the incident timeline. So that gives you a nice picture of what's going on in the roadway itself. And then you take probe data analytics and grab a couple tools there. My go-tos in this situation are usually performance charts, trend map, and user delay cost. And then you evaluate the impacts on the network surrounding this particular location. So then you get a good, clear idea of what happened and what the impacts were, so you can better plan for situations like this the next time. So both TxDOT and FDOT were very gracious enough to allow us to use their work, and we're going to be posting this as use case examples on the reporting templates website. That'll be out pretty soon. And next, I want to talk a little bit about work zone templates. The performance reporting group's been going hard on this situation. Work zones are a very tough nut compared to some of the other categories of templates that we have. So we started out with a lot of information here, and we whittled it down because in this particular case, we're looking at a daily situation. So you don't have a lot of time to put these things together into something like this one here, which was pretty straightforward. A couple of tables that you plug into your information about the operation of the work zone, speed, travel time, queue, and delay. And then a lot of the folks, both in Michael's auto reporting work zone working group and ours, wanted some additional information there. Like, what are some of the things that are also affecting our work zone operation? Is it an incident? Is it the weather? Is there inordinate amount of traffic congestion that day? What are the things that are happening out there that we can kind of consider in making work zone operations better? So we added that as well. And at the bottom of this page is a notes where you can kind of summarize everything up. So we're probably going to run with this layout for a daily work zone. We're working on a weekly work zone report as well. So this will be all talked about and put together in a on the work zone or the RITIS reporting website, and create this new performance report, which usually includes a package of templates, design resources, and those are all the tables and graphics and icons that you saw previously. All that's provided for you, so there's just some minor editing there. Some agency use cases that if you see something else that you'd like better, or you want to grab some elements from, you could do that. And then finally, a very comprehensive and easy to read step-by-step how-to guide that steps you through the entire process of using the RITIS tools, getting the results, and plugging them into the report to make a final product. So that's going to be coming very soon. Michael pointed out next month, and that's what we're shooting for, as well as the deploy of the other templates that you saw earlier. And then finally, I wanted to wrap up by telling you that Rick Ayers, our master trainer, has been going across the country and doing a lot of training sessions with respect to RITIS and getting the results and using the templates to create some reports for folks. I know he was in Florida recently. I believe he visited every district in Florida and did his dog and pony there. He's also lined up several states and talking with them about going on site and doing some training as well. So if you're really interested in learning more about how to use RITIS and how to create these reports, drop Rick a line. There's his email address there. And let me tell you, I've sat in on a couple of his sessions. It's well worth the hour and a half to learn about how to use RITIS and make effective reports. Rick is very good at doing that. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Wonderful. Appreciate that, John. And I think, maybe it's just a question to you, as people want to get involved, what might be the two easiest ways for them to reach out to you and the rest of the team to join that overall group?
Well, I'd say, start by shooting me an email and then, tell me your situation and we can pull you into the group or help you out right then and there.
Would you mind perhaps adding your email? I guess we have it right there on there at the bottom. So if you're interested, make sure to grab that email address from John. It's a fun group to work with, and certainly I think would love to have more folks join in and provide their opinion.
Absolutely. And if you have another idea about another template, or you have some ideas about some that maybe you've used in the past and you want to share that with us, just shoot me an email and we'll take a look at it and get that done if we can.
Wonderful. Well, what I'd like to do is one, hop into this last little poll here, but we want to get that agency input. And so we're going to get Michael back up here to chat with us. But again, this brings us to the opportunity of just figuring out how we can serve your teams better, how Michael and his group can serve your team better. So what you see in front of you, 2 more polls. Poll number 5, what kind of things are you currently doing with RITIS? Is it planning and operations, presentations, project and funding justification reports? And would you be willing to share some of those insights and some of those examples with us in the future? And then number 6 is, what features or functionalities, if added to RITIS, would make your life easier? Michael, you have my idea. Temporal comparison map that's also scans through the day, and you can see them side by side.
Yeah, that's a good one. And earlier, our guest speaker from FDOT gave us 4 or 5 things that he'd like to be seen built into the system as well. So this is your opportunity. There's funding available to build things that would make your lives easier. So please speak up or write to us in the last polling question there and let us know what it is that you'd like.
Now, this is unusual for us to have a few extra minutes at the end. We usually seem to be up against the time. So please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, or you have a you have something you'd like to say.
And Joanna, to your point, since we have that piece, and we're asking this question broadly, one of the things that I feel like is of great value from the CATT Lab and the coalition has been the data validation and the technical advisory piece. As we all get brought in more and get asked more questions of how can we use this data, what's it good for, how can we make our organization stronger and smarter. There are certainly limits to what it can be used for, and those teams have helped identify those, put the boundaries around them. And so, if those are pieces of interest to you as well, about learning more about the technical advisory committees, about the data validation programs that have been set up, or just wanting to get involved with them, I think that's also great input to receive. Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot with this question. Is UMD the only organization that does data validation for speed and travel time and volume estimation? I don't know that I've seen any others like nationally that do that.
Nationally, I don't know. I'm sure there's some DOTs or some universities that have done some side projects to validate some data sets. I think what's unique about us is it's very much a pooled fund approach where it's not just a few university dorks in a vacuum evaluating the thing. We've got a working group of engineers and experts from all of the coalition states. They're helping to guide how these evaluations are conducted and make sure that they're done appropriately and using the latest tools and technology that make sense and make everybody comfortable. So it's not just a vacuum, it's not a study, and it's a continuous approach to validation. You know, there's a validation that happens every quarter on some sort of data set. And oftentimes it's more than just one data set. So it's a very neat program that the coalition runs.
And certainly as part of that, right, you know, Michael, you guys aren't just continuing to look at the interstate time and time again, right? It's how do we look at edge cases? You know, how far is the data advanced? And are we there yet to use this for insert use case X?
Right, and all of those are published. They're all on the coalition's website. And if anyone needs help walking through those to understand them, interpret them, we're happy to help you with that.
Okay. Well, with that, Joanna, how are the polls looking? Are we still getting some results, or do we want to close that out?
We can, you know, we'll keep it open till at least 2:30 because these are questions where, you know, responses where it may take a little bit longer. And we have at least 11, I think, responses. So we want to make sure we give people a chance. Zoe has a note that she has, Matt, in the.
Yeah, I just saw that. I just pulled that up and I'll read that out to the group. This is from Zoe. She's saying that we're getting ready for our big rollout of RITIS and NRICS and the Vermont Agency of Transportation. Other state agencies with contracts to do work with us, regional planning commissions, NPOs, etc. And you know, if you as another agency have high level, easy to understand intro material, they'd certainly be interested to hear from you. And you know, some of the examples that they might have is a flood analysis. So Zoe, I think what might be helpful, if you don't mind, is in that Q&A box, maybe post your email address for folks, so that way we can make sure that they get directly to you. And as we hit the 2:30 mark, I want to thank everyone for attending. I see that a few folks are starting to drop off, but again, it's always a pleasure having everyone here. I want to thank the speakers, Kevin and Greg and Jesse and Michael and John, and of course, Mary Grace for helping pull all this together, and Joanna for keeping Esther for running it seamlessly as always. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you guys again in a few months. And as always, if you have questions, reach out to the very wonderful support group at RITIS, that being support@ritis.org. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you in a few months. Joanna, do you have anything, or Mary Grace, anything that you'd like to add?
No, just thank you to everyone, and thank you as always, Matt, to you for your leadership in this area, and to the CATT folks and the folks at KMJ. Appreciate it.
And all people who participated today should keep an eye out for links to follow-up materials from this event. Thank you.